For 47 years, these barbaric savages in the Iranian regime have murdered our brothers in arms. We're crushing the enemy in an overwhelming display of technical skill and military force. We will not relent until the enemy is totally and decisively defeated. Today will be yet again our most intense day of strikes inside Iran. The most fighters, the most bombers, the most strikes. Intelligence more refined and better than ever.
That was War Secretary Pete Hegseth explaining why the U.S. will not relent until Iran is totally defeated. He says today will be the, quote, most intense day of strikes inside Iran as CENTCOM shows off more of its firepower. Central Command saying U.S. Army soldiers are supporting the most integrated air defense umbrella in the history of the Middle East. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Campagno here with my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kayleigh McEnany. And also joining us today, Ainsley Earhart, co-host of Fox and Friends, and Brian Kilmeade, co-host of Fox and Friends, host of the Brian Kilmeade radio show, and host of One Nation with Brian Kilmeade. It is a Fox and Friends and Outnumbered collab today.
Back on the couch.
That's right. Yeah. All right, guys.
We need one more title, Brian.
Well, on to this new video showing a large blast in Beirut as Israel's Air Force strikes a southern suburb. This strike coming after Israel's military warned people that it will attack several areas south of Beirut, saying the terror group Hezbollah is active there. Since Operation Epic Fury began, more than 5,000 targets have been struck and 50 Iranian vessels were damaged or destroyed. Last night, President Trump shared some insight with Fox chief foreign correspondent Trey Yangst and told him this. He is not happy that Ayatollah Khamenei's son was chosen as his successor, adding this, I don't believe he can live in peace. The president said the operation's timeline is way beyond expectation in terms of result this early. And also saying, one of the things that surprised me most was when they attacked countries that were not attacking them. The commander-in-chief also revealing this, when we attacked them first, we knocked out 50% of their missiles. And if we didn't, it would have been a much harder fight. If we waited 3 days, I believe we would have been attacked. Now, when the president was pressed on an exit strategy, he hinted an end may be near. Watch.
You said it would be over soon. Are you thinking this week it will be over?
No,
Are you talking
but soon.
about days?
I think soon.
Okay, and with respect
Very soon. Look, everything they have is gone, including their leadership. In fact, there are two levels of leadership, and even actually, as it turns out, more than that. But two levels of leadership are gone. Most people have never even heard about the leaders that they're talking about. So it's obviously been very, very powerful, very effective.
All right, Brian Kilmeade, lots to discuss. What did you guys uncover and unpack for 3 hours this morning?
A lot, but I would say, for one thing, he was just talking about what has surprised him, and those was the Gulf states getting involved, rocketing them. And it plays to what he was saying on Sunday. He said that there was a plan in place for Iran really to take over the Middle East. You know, Oman is rich, and Qatar is rich, and the UAE is rich, but they're not well defended. They got missile defense, and that is it. And there was a plan in place for the bully of the Middle East, which is now Iran, used to be Saddam, to take it over. And that's why the decentralized command structure in which they have right now, which shows no one really in charge, you can act independently. That's why the president says one thing and the IRG says the other thing. And then he says, don't worry, we're not going to hit you if you're one of our Gulf states and stay out of this. At the same time, they're getting rocketed and their satellites and office buildings are getting done, is because he believes there was a plan in place as of 4 months ago to take over the Middle East. The one thing the Gulf states are worried about is they're worried about us leaving early. Don't leave them wounded, destroy them, and finish the job, because they all recognize what we recognize, and that Iran is the problem. Isn't it great to be in a Middle East conflict, and they're not blaming Israel? Israel has never been the problem. They're defending themselves, but they do it offensively, and now people realize it is Iran. And when you rocket Israel's neighbors and Israel doesn't touch them, it's pretty clear who the bad guys are.
All right, and to that point exactly, Ainsley, the Wall Street Journal wrote an op-ed published this morning saying this, is it time for President Trump to call off the bombing and declare victory in Iran? They say you'd think so, judging by the panic in Washington as the price of oil spikes, but they say that certainly is the fondest wish of the Ayatollahs who know they are losing.
Yeah, I mean, that's up to the president. The president will decide when this is over. He has a lot more intel than any of us do. And so he'll make that decision. As far as the oil prices, people just need to stop panicking. We might see some spikes for a little bit, but it's worth it to prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon, which could destroy or wipe us all out. So if I have to pay a little bit more for gas, I'll do that for the next few weeks. But it's not as expensive as it was in the beginning. 2 days ago, yesterday, it was, what, 120 a barrel? Now it's in the 90s. So we're seeing that drop a little bit. The Strait of Hormuz, we're seeing more ships go through that area. Brian was saying this morning he really wants more ships to go through. And that's, that's the direction we're heading now. But Wickoff went in and he pressed them, and President Trump begged them to take that free civilian use uranium to use for nuclear power, and they refused. Why? Because they want to enrich, and we can't let them enrich. They said from the get-go, they told Steve Wickoff at the beginning of the meetings, we have enough uranium that's enriched to build 11 nuclear bombs.
Kayleigh, as we opened with the Secretary of War saying that today is likely going to be the most intense day yet, arguments that we've decimated up to 90+% of Iranian defense in different categories. How do you see this as a calibration for the weeks ahead?
Yeah, I still can't get over what Ainsley mentioned was the opening salvo of the Iranians in the negotiation. We have enough uranium for 11 nuclear bombs, and then the Ayatollah is taken out. It's an interesting place we're in. I think President Trump has all the luxury of time to make the right decision. His base is firmly behind him. Any of the voices out there saying the MAGA base is questioning this, don't listen to them because it's just simply not accurate. And in fact, when you look at some polling, YouGov, you see Republicans who were 68% supportive of this move to 78%. When you look at MAGA in particular, 85% support for President Trump's actions. And interestingly, if you go back to Maduro, just over 50% of the MAGA base said we want Maduro taken out. President Trump did it. That number went up to 80%. So President Trump has the luxury of a political movement that's firmly behind him and trust him. I'm very interested in this decentralized power structure. Apparently, it's been diffused into 31 entities across Iran, all designed to act independently in the case that one is taken out. But there are a lot of bad things that can come from that. You mentioned the Gulf states being hit. So Pezeshkian, the president, came out and said, we apologize for attacking the Gulf states. And then what happened moments later? One of these entities goes and attacks the Gulf states.
And rebukes him.
And rebukes him. And to the point of being rebuked, these 31 entities could become warlords attacking one another. So it's a really dangerous posture, but I fully believe we have the right commander-in-chief to assess what is happening geopolitically and make the right choice.
Yeah.
A perfect tee-up with those polls, Harris. I forgot where I was yesterday. Oh, I was in the dentist's office, in the waiting room, forced to watch a different network. And I saw polls being shown that reflected a far different scope, right? And it was clearly an internal polling, but it talked about diminishing approval when the reality is that the numbers writ large show an escalating approval and a willingness to accept a short-term pain with oil, with gas, for the long-term gain of stability and peace.
Right. I mean, the president's words about it could ensue moved the markets yesterday. They performed the way that Ainsley was saying. They didn't just do that on their own because a few ships started moving. They did that because the president of the United States said some words that mattered to people. So you can't discount the public. But you know who really is manipulating them at this time? Any of those terror cells that we don't know among us. I mean, last hour I just covered the breaking news of our U.S. consulate getting hit by gunfire in Toronto, and now they're hardening that target. The Toronto police there, and they're also talking to the capital city of Ottawa authorities there. They've got to harden that U.S. embassy there and also the Israeli consulate and embassy as well. So we are in a tender spot. Our enemies want to cause chaos. And so while we do what we do, it's not just about the patience and the oil prices. It's keeping us safe here at home. And you'll hear me beat the drum all day long. Democrats, come back to the table. Come on, stop acting like toys are being thrown out of your crib that you can't reach. Come on, see the rest of us. Harden those targets. Make DHS whole as much as you can right now. CBP and ICE are already paid for, so I don't even know what they're doing. But that's important because that chaos element at home is what will make it harder for us to stay and do the job. It won't keep us. But we don't want that kind of disruption for our own citizens. We want our families to
I would love to see him take Karg Island, that oil island. He'd be just like Venezuela. We control their oil. 90% of their oil goes to this little island. The president talked about it in a 1988 interview, and I think he should grab it.
Wouldn't that portend stability? Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.